US President Joe Biden says Israel will halt what he called activities in Gaza during Ramadan under a ceasefire deal. He also adds that the Jewish state risks losing support from the rest of the world as Palestinians die in high numbers. Meanwhile, a report by news agency Reuters, a draft proposal will allow hospitals and bakeries in Gaza to be repaired, and 500 aid trucks to enter the battered enclave every day. The report also added that under the draft proposal, the exchange of Palestinian prisoners for Israeli hostages will be at a ratio of 10-1. New York police officers detained protesters at the Rockefeller Center as US President Joe Biden attended an interview in Midtown Manhattan in New York. The protesters held banners as they chanted slogans against US support to Israel. The protesters asked the US president for a ceasefire in Gaza. Well, this is as they continue to raise slogans like, "Not in our name." Jordanian Air Force airdropped food aid and medical supplies into Gaza. This is the biggest airdrop operation so far that delivered the much-needed aid to millions of Gazans, mostly living in camps. The operation deployed 4 C-130 planes, which also included one from the French Air Force. The aid was dropped to at least 11 sites along the Gaza coast, from its northern edge to south. Previous airdrops by Jordan were sent to hospitals. Now the Jordanian army runs in Gaza. The Greek government has approved the country's participation in a European Union naval mission in the Red Sea. Greece's Security Council approved a proposal by the defense minister. According to Greece, the mission is important as the Houthi attacks have disrupted the Greek-owned commercial vessels' activities at the country's biggest port of Piraeus. The Greek warship Hydra will participate in the mission. According to the reports, the vessel is set to depart in the coming days. France, Italy and Germany are also taking part in the EU mission. The code name of the mission is Aspides, which is the Greek word for shields. The owners of the cargo ship is planning to tow the vessel to Saudi Arabia once the ship is all patched up. On February 18, the cargo vessel was hit by a Houthi missile in the southern Red Sea. According to the firm, the ship's engine room and number 5 hold are underwater. Officials say they are looking at bringing in a work ship that will attempt to close the hole. The damaged vessel has also left patches of oil that is floating on the water. The ship was carrying 22,000 tons of fertilizer on board. In Jerusalem, Israeli police forcefully dispersed ultra-Orthodox Jews who were trying to block roads. The protests took place shortly after the top Israeli court heard challenges to exemptions granted to ultra-Orthodox Jews from military conscription. One poster said, "He will rather die than join the army. Now, the ultra-Orthodox claim the right to study in seminaries instead of serving in uniform for the standard 3 years. Some say their pious lifestyles will clash with military customs. The ultra-Orthodox make up 13% of Israel's population. Now, the Pentagon said that the death of an airman is a tragic event. According to Pentagon spokesperson Major General Patrick Ryder, U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin is following the situation. Earlier, an U.S. Air Force member set himself ablaze outside the Israeli embassy in Washington, D.C. According to reports, the man started a live stream before he ignited the flames. And at one point he said, he will no longer be complicit in genocide. In December, a person self-immolated outside the Israeli consulate in Atlanta. Meanwhile, in the U.S. state of Minneapolis, demonstrators interrupted Republican presidential candidate Nikki Haley's rally. At the rally, Haley took aim at former President Donald Trump and his military record. She also criticized Trump's NATO comments, while saying that the Republican frontrunner is ready to encourage Russian President Vladimir Putin to invade U.S. allies. Haley has vowed to continue her race to the White House as she argues that a large swathe of Republicans continue to reject Trump. French President Emmanuel Macron said the Russian defeat is crucial to the security and stability in Europe. As Western leaders gathered in Paris to send Russian President Vladimir Putin a message of European determination on Ukraine. He said Moscow is showing more aggressive nature, not just in Ukraine, but in general. Macron also highlighted that he cannot rule out sending troops on the ground in Ukraine. The leaders in Paris discussed the formation of a new coalition to supply Ukraine with missiles and bombs of medium and long range. The editor of a Moscow newspaper said he stands by the decision to publish a front-page article after the death of a Kremlin critic, Alexei Navalny. This even though most of the print run was confiscated. The weekly called Sobes Ethnic ran a front-page photo of Navalny with the caption, "There is hope." The publication came out 4 days after his death. Now, the issue contained a 2-page spread with an obituary and reports of vigils in his honor across Moscow. This is in striking contrast with most Russian state media, as majority of them did not cover Navalny's sudden death in the Arctic penal colony. Sweden is set to be part of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or the NATO. The Hungarian parliament approved Stockholm's NATO bid days after it signed a deal to buy 4 fighter jets from Sweden. Swedish Prime Minister hails the quote-unquote historic day, which has now cleared the final obstacle for the Nordic country to join the military alliance. Now, striving to join NATO, Sweden says its submarines will give the military alliance a strategic edge in the Baltic Sea. Moreover, as required, under NATO rules, Sweden is aiming to spend 2% of its GDP on defense by 2026 to increase its military capacity across land, sea, and air. Meanwhile, Taiwan says 5 Chinese coast ships entered the restricted waters around the frontline islands. Now, according to the head of Taiwan's Ocean Affairs Council, the ships left shortly after being warned. Recently, China's Coast Guard began regular patrols around the Taiwan-controlled Kinmen Islands. Taiwan's defense minister said he hopes the incidents around Kinmen will not escalate and will be handled smoothly. On the other hand, Burundi has accused the country's main rebel group of killing 9 people of a family, including a soldier. The Red Tabara insurgents claimed they had killed 6 troops. The attack was reported late on Sunday in the western region of Burundi, where the Red Tabara group has rare bases. The presidency said the rebels also ransacked an office of the ruling party and accused Rwanda of backing the rebels. Now, Burundi has closed its border for Rwanda for backing the rebels, a claim denied by Kigali. The South Korean government has provided legal protection to nurses. It will allow them to perform a few medical procedures that are generally done by doctors. Now, this comes as authorities seek to reduce the workload on hospital staff caused by the ongoing strike by doctors. Now, since the junior doctors announced their walkout, nurses have been complaining about intense workload. However, senior hospital staff have warned about the legal risk of the latest step. Meanwhile, in Japan, babies born in Japan fell for an 8th straight year last year. According to the preliminary government data, it hit a fresh record low. This underscores the daunting task the country faces in trying to stem depopulation. The number of births fell from 5.1% from a year earlier, while the number of marriages also slid by 5.9%. Now, this means that the number of marriages fell below the 500,000 mark for the first time in 90 years. The government says it will take unprecedented steps to cope with the declining birth rate, expanding childcare and promoting wage hikes for younger workers could be part of it. A major wildfire has been contained by more than 50% in Mississippi. Now, footage released by the Forest Department showed thick smoke and flames rising as a wildfire raged in Jefferson Davis County. The wildfire has affected over 1,300 acres of land. Fighters have been battling the blaze since Saturday. Peru, on the other hand, has declared a health emergency across most part of the country. The announcement comes as a heat wave and heavy rains have contributed to the spike in dengue fever cases. Now, according to the government, the death toll due to the virus has risen to 32 so far this year. The total cases have also climbed to more than 31,000 in the first 8 weeks of the year. Now, most of these cases are being reported in the northern part of the country. A massive landslide has engulfed a village in central Bolivia. Several homes and farms have been destroyed. The mudslide covered the entire village of Lockit. The disaster occurred after the dam of a nearby lagoon burst. According to authorities, in fact, 40 families lost their homes, but there were no fatalities. Meanwhile, in the Andean region of Potosi, heavy rains over the weekend caused rivers to burst their banks. A French town is expected to enter the path of controversy after hundreds of pupils headed to school in uniforms for the first time. Now, the sudden change in the southern French town is part of a national experiment to determine whether to make uniforms compulsory. Around 700 students at 4 schools in the town of Béziers appeared to be the first to try uniforms, as uniforms have never been required in state schools in mainland France. However, President Emmanuel Macron last month announced a uniform trial at around 100 schools. Macron aims to make uniforms mandatory nationwide in 2026 if it is successful. The decision has also witnessed strong resistance from teachers, students, and parents. The Odysseus moon mission has released new images. The photos show its vertical descent to the Malapert A landing, which is a landing site. Now, according to Intuitive Machines, it is the furthest south any vehicle has been able to land on the moon. The moon lander is the first private spacecraft ever to reach the lunar surface and the first from the US since 1972. The uncrewed robot spacecraft reached the lunar surface on the 22nd of February. Extreme swimmer Stevenard, nicknamed the Seal, has achieved a new feat. The challenge was to swim without a wetsuit in 1 degree Celsius water of Antarctica. In the company of other swimmers, the 46-year-old swam for a kilometer, an English scientific base. 2 weeks earlier, the Seal crossed the Beagle Channel from Chile to Argentina, a distance of 1.7 kilometers in 46 minutes in water at around 8 degrees Celsius. One of the most infamous cybercrime gangs in the world, Lockit, has resurfaced once again. In a rare international operation last week, law enforcement from 10 countries had disrupted operations of the Lockit ransomware group. However, it seems the operation was nothing but a smoke show. Lockit says that it has restored its servers and is back in business. Now, the new Lockit site shows a gallery of company names, each attached to a countdown clock, marking the deadline within which the company has to pay the ransom. Understand that Lockit makes money by stealing sensitive data. It then threatens to leak their information if the victim fails to pay the ransom amount. In some business news now, Micron Technology has started mass production of its high-bandwidth memory semiconductors for use in NVIDIA's latest chip for artificial intelligence, sending its shares up more than 5%. The chip will consume 30% less power than rival offerings. Now, according to Micron, NVIDIA will use the chip in its next generation H200 graphic processing units, expected to start shipping in the second quarter and overtake the current H100 chip that has powered a massive surge in revenue at the chip designer. An expert panel reviewing Boeing's safety management processes has found a disconnect between the plane maker's senior management and employees on safety culture and raised other concerns. The panel's report was directed by the US Congress after 2 fatal Boeing 737 MAX crashes in 2018 and 2019 that killed 346 people. It criticized Boeing's safety culture on a number of fronts and found a lack of awareness of safety-related metrics at all levels of the organization. It also cited an inadequate and confusing implementation of the components of a positive safety culture. Standard Chartered has suspended new investments by its clients in China into offshore products via a quota-based channel. The suspension comes amid a surge in demand for overseas investments due to weakness in the local market and currency. The London-headquartered bank, in a statement to Reuters, cited commercial reasons as its explanation for the suspension of new investments under the Qualified Domestic Institutional Investor Program.